Welcome to Season 2 of Kindred, hosted by me, Kate, and my sister, Jenn. In this podcast, we explore our human relationship to animals and the natural world.
In connecting to our world, we also connect to compassion, understanding, and empathy. How can we see ourselves not as separate from animals and nature, but part of an active ecosystem?
This season, Jenn and I will focus on learning about the history of our disconnect to the natural world. What knowledge and connection have we lost and why?
We'll talk with scientists, conservationists, academics, and many others as we look to answer the question, how can we implement change in order to heal our planet?
And we'll explore how we can repair and restore our connection and relationship to our fellow keystone species and ecosystems. Hello and welcome to Kindred. How are you, sister Jennifer, today?
I am doing well.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
It's another beautiful day.
It really is.
And I'm calling you sister specifically because today we are going to do something a little different. Today we are nerding out hard. I take that as a compliment, and going to talk about something that we believe is really critical to cover, even if it's not sexy or glamorous per se. So I'll just start by saying last summer, our lovely producer, Kat Gaddy, and I were chatting about how people in general can talk about or use language specific to animals and nature. And the idea, I was sort of talking about the idea of normalizing animals and nature and how we need to learn about them and speak about them in a way that takes the alarm and misunderstanding out of it or them. Like an example is like when people talk about spiders being gross or snakes being gross or foxes being evil or, sharks are terrifying human predators, etc. And that just led us down a road of what rhetoric means, which I will say right now, I thought that term was inherently a negative one, which it isn't. But then specifically to language, and it just got us talking about language as a tool and how it is used in a few different arenas. So today we are going to focus on how language in context to media and conservation and science is deployed with a specific focus and how it can take away agency from animals in nature and people too, obviously, and the deep understanding and connection we can have to the natural world, or alternately create the opposite experience. So to help us do this and help us navigate through this conversation littered with many rabbit holes, I wanted to introduce you to our brother, Justin Coffin. We did take we took what's the test where you, was a genetic test? Mm-hmm. It is true. We have done the DNA test. He is our brother. We are announcing it here.
You heard it here first, people.
We heard it here first. But I'm really excited to have Justin because not just being a beloved brother, he is what I like to call my walking dictionary and a reference I use often. So hello, Justin. How are you, brother? Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to be amongst family.
Did you want to say hi to your brother?
Hey, bro. Welcome. What's up?
Yeah, welcome. So let me, get a little formal for a second and just introduce Justin to you all. Justin is a writer whose work includes ghostwriting books, essays, articles, book reviews, and plays. He is also a freelance writer working in communications and speech writing. Justin has self-published 2 books. The first is called Fishtown Forget Me Not, which is a meditation and story on place and change told by a discarded iced tea carton, which is fascinating and adorable at the same time. And El Bunny, which is a collaboration with fine artist Terrence Laragione, and is a life story of an authentic and made-up Philadelphia character in the form of a large bunny. He also has a new essay in a collection just out this month called Ways of Walking, and that's published by New Door Books. So Justin, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm really happy to do it. It's about time I got on your podcast.
Right? No kidding. I mean, it's a family
What do I got to do? How much more related can I be?
So we're going to break this into 3 parts. The first section will be what is language? And then we'll talk about how is it used? And then we'll talk about how can we change language in order to create a clearer and more accurate understanding of animals and nature. And part 1, Justin, I'm just going to hand over to you. So how has language developed over the centuries, and how is it used as a tool today?
Well, it's been used. It's one of the ways that humans have defined themselves as being human, right? They use language, and that's not necessarily where we find ourselves now. Much like we thought the same thing about culture, right? But language is so just getting really, really basic. The definition, which you will find in a dictionary, and we'll get to dictionaries soon, is that language is communication by voice. And the definition I looked at said using arbitrary auditory symbols in conventional ways with conventional meanings. Now, I think one of the most important dynamics to remember with language is that it does not feel arbitrary. If you're learning a language, it does. But if you are speaking your native language, it feels like your thoughts. I mean, it's really ingrained, and you can think of it as thought clothed in sound. So there are a lot of misconceptions about language because it's so ingrained in us. I'm probably going to use the word ingrained a lot. It's just it is essential. It's not essential, but it feels like how we think sometimes.
Right.
And it also feels like there is actually a connection between the word and the thing, between what is signified and the signifier, right?
Okay.
It feels like those connections feel like something. And interestingly enough, at one time, and there may be people who still believe this, but that language was originally, like the original language was a connection of word and thing. Language was more like magic. So when Adam names the animals, it's not him going, hey, you're a lion, hey, you're a this. It is a way that God gave him to have dominion. It actually says have dominion over the animal. So he named them, and that was part of it. It's like it's a spell or something.
Oh, interesting.
So you can think of it as a misconception. You can also think of it as a kind of magic that you can find in language. And that magic is a sense of connection. And there are lots of different kinds of ways we use language. I mean, think of laws. Laws are language that binds us, right?
Right.
And so you think of the idea of a spell, of magic, of an incantation. Speak of the devil and he appears. I mean, there's this instinct to think of think of language as something that does actually make and create these connections.
Right.
So just to talk for a minute about rules, we think about the rules of language like the rules of grammar, and I'll get to that, but there are rules of language that we all know, we all use. That's why we say we play tic-tac-toe and not toe-tack-tick. Nobody, a horse doesn't go clop clip, and no doorbell goes dong ding. Now the reason
so
is
true. Just does not roll off the tongue. It
doesn't, and we know how those sounds work. So every native speaker, says ding dong rather than the other way around. So it's just, we know that. How do we know? Yeah. We just do. There's also rules to how we describe something. So if I say, the big green tractor ran over the stupid little French man, that makes sense, right? Right. Yeah. But nobody says the green big tractor ran over the French little stupid man.
Right. Unless you're
don't,
trying to learn French, and that's what you do, but you know that
right.
people look at you like you're not speaking correctly.
exactly. And it's just,
Right.
it's not like you're not violating a grammatical rule. You are violating an actual embedded rule in the language that we all know.
And if we don't do it right, it's harder to connect.
Right. And so if someone
Right.
says the green big tractor, they're 3, or they're learning English. Right.
Yes.
Right.
That's me. 3 all the time.
Right. And then there are the rules that we stick to because we're told to. And some of those rules are born out of really weird and kind of outdated reasons. And this goes back to the idea of there being an original language that was actually truly connecting word and thing,
Right.
So a lot of the rules that we adhere to now are born out of this idea that there was one language, and then every language that sort of followed was a further corruption. And this is the story of the Tower of Babel. This was actually believed to be true, that after the flood, there's this group of people walking around, right? Everybody's
Right.
the world has been wiped out. We're starting anew. These people are walking around. They get to Babylon. Here's a good place to live. Let's build a tower that goes to heaven. And so they were working together, and God saw this and thought it was blasphemy and cursed them. And he struck them all with this curse that nobody could understand anybody else. So everybody was speaking a different language. And they were then dispersed to the 4 corners of the earth, because you don't get to heaven by circumventing God, you get to heaven through him. So this tower had to be stopped. But so that's
interesting. Oh my gosh, I love that story. I forgot about that story.
Right. So, but that idea, as far as grammarians took it, was that Hebrew was the language that came after that, right?
Okay.
And so the Old Testament is written in Hebrew, that is an ancient language. And so it's not the pure language. It's not the pure God-given word and thing united language, but it is as close as we get. Then Greek, which is what the language the New Testament is written in, is a further corruption. Latin is a further corruption. And so we have these ideas of language getting worse and worse. And, so Latin is this further corruption of a language we're not even speaking. We're speaking English. So that's a totally corrupted language. But so the rules that we have are often based on, well, this is a rule in Latin, so it should be a rule in English, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But we think about this stuff because there's a lot of anxiety around language and thinking of English. Is it she and I? Is it her and I?
Is it me and I and me went to the store? Right.
Joe and myself are going out the door. So
exactly.
And so those are grammatical rules, right?
Right.
But
and it's sort of relative. I mean, it's also
it's a rule because they said it's a rule. It's not like there are rules. So it's a grammarian's rule. It's a grammatical rule. Yes. But so everybody, if you've taken writing classes or anything like that, and you heard about not splitting an infinitive, which an infinitive is to be, to go, to do. It's a verb in sort of this theoretical space.
Right.
So in Star Trek, where it says to boldly go, that's a split infinitive because you put an adverb boldly between to and go. So that's supposed to be a no-no. But the reason you're not supposed to do it is because in Latin, an infinitive was one word. And you couldn't split it. So they didn't.
Yeah.
But it's inserting an inapplicable, inserting a rule for inapplicable reasons into a language that it doesn't apply in.
Right.
But so that's kind of, so you can think of language as a grammarian, and there are lots of good reasons for learning how to write clearly, how to speak clearly, how to, do those sorts of things. But those are rules that you have to study and learn. And then there's the linguist who studies what's said.
Right.
And the idea is English exists in the mouths of native English speakers.
Uh-huh.
So that's where it is. Now you can think about, every year you hear about, well, this word's now in the dictionary. Now LOL is in the dictionary, whatever it is, like these words,
Right.
or whatever it is.
It's sure in my dictionary.
And there was a time when literally one of the definitions of literally became not literally, because that's how people use it. And it can drive people nuts.
Right. Yeah.
But the dictionary doesn't make the rules. The dictionary says, just takes down what people say. And
that's fascinating to me, what you're just saying there, because that means that there aren't hard and fast rules. And if everybody's saying it, it gets to be a word.
Well, that's the hard and fast rule.
Okay, right. Yeah.
But wouldn't it depend who you talk to? Because some people think if it's not in the Oxford English Dictionary, it's not. I mean, is LOL in that dictionary?
Well, I mean, it's basically, it's
know,
a marketing
the dictionary
tool for Merriam-Webster.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like Merriam-Webster said, these are the words that are in the dictionary this year.
Right.
Okay.
But, and we want an authority, right? We want somebody to say, this is right, this is wrong. But language only works because we agree. That's it. We agree on something. It's like the most democratic thing in some, and you look at it one angle, it is that, right? It's a very democratic thing.
Interesting.
And
I've not thought of it that way. Mm-hmm.
So I looked this up. The word thunder used to be thunder. It was way back, before there were even the English, the Arabic characters that we make the alphabet with, like there were old English symbols, but the word was thunder. And
Which
then for
lame.
a long time,
That's
So lame.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we changed it. It's much better.
it's super lame.
Yeah.
Everybody can agree. And I think
Right.
if anybody back in, 1000 AD was told, hey, buddy, you could say thunder instead for that sound, he'd say, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Because it does.
And you
But
all
for a
agreed,
long
and then it
time-
became thunder. Right. Exactly.
Both words existed, and I'm not exactly clear how they were used differently, but thunder and thunder were both words for the same thing until finally thunder won out because it just sounds better. And that's just because we decided.
Mhm.
Now, at some point, and so the idea of correctness and incorrectness, it doesn't really apply to the linguist's way of looking at it. But still, there's a lot of anxiety around language. Are we using it right? Are we using it wrong? There are definitely many ways to use it. Language is a lot of things. It is a tool. It's a system. It's a set of symbols. It's a lot of things. But one of the things that's kind of interesting to me is the idea of when you think about these rules, we're supposed to live by the grammatical rules. It's a function of power, right? And using people's anxiety to an end.
Right.
And so, look, I love the language, but there are some very dark aspects to how it's been deployed. I mean, you look at Native American populations, and the government, the U.S., the federal government determined that it was going to basically eradicate their native languages
Right.
and make them speak English,
Yeah.
which is a horror of a
Yes.
thing. It's a terrible
Absolutely.
thing to do.
Mhm.
But it is also, I mean, it's a function of imperialism, right? It's a function
Yep.
of colonialism.
Yep.
But I mean, if you want to dehumanize someone, if you want to make someone feel to take their roots away from them, basically.
Mhm.
Um,
And we'll talk about this a
Tell
little
them-
bit later, but also
Right.
how much we lose when we lose these specific
Yeah.
languages. Mhm.
right.
Well, you not
and-
only dehumanize them, but you render them unable to communicate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
And-
it makes them feel and appear less than.
Other. Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that idea right
Powerless. Yes. It
goes
takes away
back-
their power.
there, and the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, the word barbarian is from the Greek, and it means someone who has no language, because their language is just bar, 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 bar. That's
Oh,
where that
wow.
word comes from.
Oh my
Interesting.
goodness. That's incredible. I did not know that.
So that's you talk about sort of a dehuman, like these people are animals living out in the woods or
Right.
whatever it
Right.
is. They're
Yeah.
not
Right.
human. And that sentiment it can be
Whew.
applied in a million ways in a different,
Makes me feel makes me
Little
feel sweaty.
sweaty.
Mhm.
right. Well, so these are, I mean, language has functions depending on who's using it, and
Yep.
some of it is we were talking about small talk, right? And the idea that you're not trying to convey critical information when you're making small talk with someone, when you're waiting for the elevator or for for something at the store.
Yeah.
You are that language is called within linguistic spheres phatic language, and it is basically you're just saying we're friends. We are a community together.
Right.
I like you, you like me. We're talking. That's phatic language. That's small talk, and people can be impatient with it, and there are people who overuse it. But
right.
That's it. That is a function of language.
A lovely way to connect. A lovely way to connect in a moment.
And the opposite of that is, language that is used to sort of determine in groups from out groups. And again, if you want to go back to the Bible, the word for these code words, like code, using language to decide whether someone's in or out of the group, is the shibboleth, which is I think a Hebrew word for creek or stream. And after a battle between the Ephraimites and somebody, the losing side was trying to escape where the battlefield. And so they would try to get to cross this ford in the River Jordan, I think it was, to get away and get free.
Right.
So the soldiers set up a checkpoint, basically. And, so the losing side, I think it was the Ephraimites. Maybe they won. Doesn't matter, unless you're an Ephraimite.
True.
They said, "Okay, what's this right here behind me?" And if they said shibboleth, that was a person who was on the winning. That's the accent. That was the dialect that people on the winning side called it. The people on the losing side said sibboleth.
Ooh,
it's like
snap.
It's like trying to get out of Philadelphia and saying, "What's this sandwich I have in my hand?" And you say, "It's a here." I say, "No, it's a hoagie."
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So if you say hoagie,
interesting.
But
that's fascinating to think that that happened all those years. Yeah, that's
right.
It's an ancient form of power.
Like I said, there's a lot of anxiety about how we use the language, and as someone who, what if people ask me what I do for a living, I say a writer. Sometimes they get anxious. It's like saying I'm a 6th grade grammar teacher.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like talking to somebody and you realize they're a hairstylist and you're like, oh, geez, my hair looks terrible.
Or my friend Leanne always used to, if she would say, "Damn it," around Kurt, she's like, "Oh, he's a priest." I'm like, he doesn't care. It's just that kind of idea that some people are going to judge you. Yeah,
exactly.
Right. But that anxiety has a function.
Wow. Okay. That is fascinating. There's just like a couple things too, like just the thing. I just keep going back to the shattered language in the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And just how it still lives, it's still living in our language and our culture. And it leads me now to section 2, which is what we want to talk about, is how is language used? And our focus is specifically in science and conservation. So just looking forward, I guess the question is, so how is language used in science and academia? And sort of with your words echoing through in my head, if we look at ecology, biology, botany, for example, in context to like academia or science, it's detailed and specific in its dissection of the thing, which you were talking about earlier, and tends to deal strictly in like the facts. And it seems to be based on the objective with little of the experience of the subject, and doesn't include or find relevant what is not identified or named. And so just to give a quick sort of definition of science, I was actually just looked it up, and even the definition was interesting to me. It's the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and the natural world through observation and experiment. And even that definition of the term science, I have to break down so many of the words. I'm almost like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what I just read.
Right. I read it 5 times through. I'm like, wait, what does this actually mean?
Right.
Yeah.
There's the word intellectual and practical activity and systematic and structure. And I think it's these clinical terms that are often even presented in Latin terms, right? It's like everything, like I guess in like botany, biology has like a lot of like all the plants have Latin terms.
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of like looking at the functionality of a thing, which then again, to me, leads to like a lack of autonomy and a lack of feeling past the action or reaction of something. And then I guess, why is this even an issue? What is missing from the language of science, and how has it guided and influenced the lack of like personage and agency in the natural world? And Justin, you were talking about that before, just about how, dehumanizing and diminishing language can be. And we can apply that, I think, to animals and nature.
Yeah, and this definition of science lends itself very much to hard sciences, right? It's not like sociology so much. This is botany or biology and stuff like that,
Right.
So how is the tool deployed? And it's deployed to separate, right?
Right.
It's deployed to atomize, to get it, to break it down to the tiniest particles you can, and look at it that way. It doesn't seem to work the other way very much, though, right? I mean, you sort of have half of a process.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
it's right. Yeah, to specify rather than to include. It's
right.
Like, it's the
systematic study of structure.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. And in a large part, I understand that it has to be clinical and show the specificity of certain things and the differences between them, because that's sort of the code that's how it operates, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, or in chemistry, you have to learn all these formulas. That's why I thought I hated science for a long time, just because it is so specific and there's one way, and it's very exclusive.
It sure can be. It certainly can be. And that's, I want to talk about Robin Wall Kimmerer for a second, who she's a member of the Potawatomi Nation and a teaching professor of environmental biology. And she wrote a book, her latest book is called Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Women, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. So I just want to read you guys a quote, because I really think it really, it lends itself so beautifully to what we're talking about. And the quote is, "I did learn another language in science, though, one of careful observation, an intimate vocabulary that names each little part. To name and describe, you must first see, and science polishes the gift of seeing. I honor the strength of the language that has become a second tongue to me. But beneath the richness of its vocabulary and its descriptive power, something is missing. The same something that swells around you and in you when you listen to the world. Science can be a language of distance, which reduces a being to its working parts. It is a language of objects. The language scientists speak, however precise, is based on a profound error in grammar, an omission, a grave loss in translation from the native languages of these shores." And I just find, end quote, I find that such a beautiful example of what we're talking about. And when she says, science, it polishes the gift of seeing, and there is a richness. And she's saying, I love my second language that I learned. There's so much, there's a reason for it, and there's so much good. It's so critical to actually seeing a thing from a little atom to the actual manifestation of the whole little being. It's just, there's so much missing too. And I think another example is when, issues such as climate control are discussed. It can be really, clinical, discussing diagnostics with like inflammatory language, which then that gives rise to fear and denial. And now that's going into politics. I think that's where politics and conservation collide. And I don't want to go down the political rabbit hole. But it's key to note that it's also okay and critical and very important for science to be detailed. But what does basing everything on this take away from the subject that we're looking at? And Justin, you had made a really good point, just getting back to general language in general about poetry in the English language too. And,
Yeah,
and her words are so poetic too,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. And it's very interesting, her talking, because she's talking about scientific language, and there are things that are happening in science that are studies of systems rather than this sort of, dispersal of everything. But there is a way in which we think about things and talk about things, not scientists necessarily, but lay people that think about things as individualized, right? Don't think of a forest as a living thing. It is a set of systems or whatever, and it has living things in it, but also, if you take it down to rocks and roots and this and that, you are missing a bigger picture. And that's
exactly.
But there are I guess the idea of poetry is not scientific in the sense of analysis. And so there's all this, all these connections surprising connections that can be made in poetry, and all, or whatever it is, just,
Well, right. And I think poetry can address what she's saying, when she says something is missing, the same something that swells around you and in you when you listen to the world. And poetry poetry speaks to that. And I think it's a beautiful combination of language in the arts and science in the arts.
It is practically a definition of poetry. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was something in that section too, just to where she's talking about, the languages that have been destroyed that she is learning about have 10, 15 speakers, and those speakers are in their 80s,
Right.
But so they would go to these schools and be re-educated and get their language taken away from them. And one of the things that she talks about that I loved in that book was she talks about they were told that their language was crude and rude because there was no word for please, because there's no option of, you don't the thing is,
right.
English has the option for using please or not, because you can be rude or not. You can be nice about it, or you can be,
right,
not nice. And a language without please doesn't mean it's rude. It means, her point was that it assumes that there is a respect, there is a thank you,
inherently
gratitude,
more consideration is given. Right, in the language.
And that giving is and sharing is just part of the culture rather than mine and yours.
Yeah, and she talks about how difficult her native tongue is to learn because it is so detailed. And I think it actually so mirrors beautifully the detail that lives in the natural world, and her language matches that. It's a lovely book, and we'll talk about more another time. But so how is this discussion and conversation pertinent in conservation? And I think, Jenn and you and I talk about a lot, we talk about this a lot, and we use specific language used within conservation or deployed at conservation, meaning us, issues of climate change and, issues of, what's happening in the oceans and all of these things that we're trying to help support animals in nature. And I think one of the biggest things that we've talked about is how specific language can undermine, it can dismantle, it can get very political, and there's a certain type of rhetoric, I'll say positive and negative, that can be used within conservation and at conservation. I think it can also be certain media and newspapers and all of the things can use certain language that can actually end up hurting conservation. Right. It can come off very condescending. It can come off too much trying to anthropomorphize animals. And I think when we try to put, human experience on the natural world, you lose something there as well. You lose something. We're trying to talk about a shark. We don't need to try to make it be more human. We need to break that animal down and see how critical it is acting in its ecosystem so that maybe we can stop thinning. They're the ones who keep the ocean balanced, right? So it's sort of like if we can use certain language that is supporting, I think our goal here is in this conversation is learning how to better support the natural world, not create more misinformation and lack of connection. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think definitely. So that's the thing I would say is supportive language and connecting language rather than condescending or separating kind of language.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. And I think, we're going to take a quick break in a second, but my last thought on that is just exactly like this is our focus is using language to connect to animals and nature, right? And to create a deeper, like exactly you're saying, creating deeper understanding of each other so that we can see science, right? And feel, which is the other part that Kimmerer is talking about, like, all the other things, how integrated we all are to each other. On that note, we're going to take a quick break, guys, and we'll be right back. So moving on to section 3, we're asking the question, how can we change our language in order to create a clearer and more accurate understanding of animals and nature? And why is it important? So, I think our perspective is we need to inspire love and connection, right? We need to use positive language and accurate language for sure. It's really that combination. And I really think a change is happening. I don't believe that we're not breaking any barriers or having this conversation. It's a conversation that is happening in science as well. And, science is very fact and informed based, and this is really important. However, I just feel like we need to bring in the love and the connection aspect. And, and then how do we do that? So what can we do instead? And I think this goes back to our episodes where we talked to bush babies and the programs they're putting together. And, I've talked about this before, Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots programs, and really focusing in on the younger generations and using a different, more inclusive language that inspires the next generations to want to dig deeper into the experience of the natural world. I think a lot of times in the past, love has been seen in the academic world as a weakness and a distraction. And I actually see it as equaling respect. I really think that's what we're doing. It's like, to me, bringing love into that conversation is actually is an aspect of respect. And without that, again, you're losing stuff. And, it's like the example of Kate Stafford and Monique Udell. These are tried and true scientists, right? But they clearly love and deeply respect what they're studying, in marine life and domestic animals. And again, Kimmerer combines these two worlds so beautifully and shows how both enrich the other.
And I actually think that you can't truly respect something that you don't have care for.
Right.
Like, I'm thinking of it in terms of, let's say a parent is like, you have to respect me, but you might be able to get the desired behavior you're looking for, but respect doesn't really come with, if there's fear or misunderstanding, I don't really believe there truly is respect. I think there has to be a connection and a caring.
That's exactly right. And that leads me right into the next question is, how does negative language lead to fear and shame and lack of agency? And I think, that's where I think people like, I was going to mention this later, but I'm just going to say now, this is where Sean Heinrichs works so hard. He's like, I'm trying to take shame out of conservation and means using different language. He's changing the language of how he speaks about his passion and his love and the subjects that he's talking about, which are sharks and other things, right? And then Karen Vardaman, who I think you were going to talk about before, and her work with ranchers and wolves.
Yeah, because that whole thing about like, I think you can use the love more with the little ones, like, oh, look at this little tiny baby. But if you're talking to a rancher about love, they just want their cows not to be dead. Right. So, and there's where respect is, like knowing how, like, these scientists use their knowledge to create a connection. That's the thing, is that the you don't lose the specificity of science, but they use their incredible intellect and knowledge and depth of knowledge to create connection. And then they get respect, which equals caring to this rancher. But if you start talking about love, he's not going to be interested.
Right. But then Sean's going to be like, that's when inspiration comes in. And that's where Sean's like, I want inspiration, not hope. But what are you going to say, Justin?
Well, it's I'm also thinking of language and how it is used, and as a thing that's basically in the atmosphere, whether it's in the news you consume or whatever it is. There's living language and there's dead language, right? There's language that reveals and there's language that hides. And sometimes, I mean, one of the reasons why I think that there is this, that there is this language around some of the things we're talking about, this, what you're calling like negative language, is because there are forces at work that don't want conservation, right? They want and so you don't want to say I hate the environment, because you don't hate the environment. You don't say I don't care about the environment, because sure, you care about it. But so one of the things I think is important to do is careful who you listen to and careful how you listen, because the zone is flooded on purpose with so much information that people give up and walk away from it.
Right.
And so, so you can talk about positive language or negative language, but I think it's, if you are truly trying, it's language connects when you are trying to connect through language, right? That's the thing. So,
well, and I do think that in conservation, I do think some of the sort of the intense and what could be perceived as off-putting language was originally used. They're trying to get people's attention.
Yes.
You got to wake up and pay attention to this sort of. They wanted to cause a little bit of discomfort, but it just a lot of people say, this is too much for me.
Yeah. And that's where Sean's trying to take out that shame language. I don't want to speak for him, but I think that's true. But that's a great point.
What I'm talking about with all the information is things like junk science. I mean, industries have used it, like, saying that cigarettes are good for you, or, and these things happened, and they have, that there's no such thing as climate change, or if it is, it's reversible, or it's no big deal, or whatever it is. There's just, the zone is flooded with information, and it's language just as a steamroller. It's not, again, it is being deployed to make everybody exhausted.
Yeah.
And to say that there is no real way to know anything.
Right. Yeah. Never mind. I won't try.
Yeah.
So Justin, when we had talked to you before, you read us a beautiful quote. I just thought we could wrap up with that. It's a beautiful embodiment of what we're talking about. So yeah, could you read that quote, please?
Sure thing. So this is a book I don't know very well. It's by a man named Henry Beston. It's called The Outermost House. And I will just read it. For the animal shall not be measured by man. In a world older and more complete than ours, they move finished and complete, gifted with extensions of the senses we have lost or never attained, living by voices we shall never hear. They are not brethren, they are not underlings. They are other nations, caught with ourselves in the net of life and time, fellow prisoners of the splendor and travail of the earth.
Sheesh. Gorgeous. It's really beautiful. And I think that really does sum up in all the different levels what we're talking about. And thank you for reading that. It's really, really sweet. Thank you so much, Justin, for joining us today and sort of navigating us through this giant hole that we were brave enough to jump into. And I think we're not here to ask questions and answer them, just to continue and be part of a bigger discussion and an open dialogue, and just really trying to root into how we can change our language and be more inclusive. And so thanks for all that you've offered today. We really appreciate it. And it's really fun to have you here as a guest and as a brother.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real hoot. And I love talking about this stuff.
So I just wanted to tease a little future episode for you guys and let you know that we will be reviewing Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, who we had quoted earlier. And we loved that book. We listened to that book. It's made a huge impact on my thinking and perspective. And so look out for that coming in the next this season. So thanks again, you guys, for joining us. That's all we have for today. I think this was just one big takeaway. And again, thanks so much for Justin Coffin joining us. That was great to have him. Yes. And we will see you guys next episode. Lots of love.
Bye. Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jenn, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and feel free to contact us through our website at kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find links to our socials, Patreon page, and show notes.